Hello, and welcome to the How to Exit podcast, where we introduce you to a world of small to medium business acquisitions and mergers. We interview business owners, industry leaders, authors, mentors, and other influencers with the sole intent to share with you what it looks like to buy or sell a business. Let's get rolling. And now a moment for our sponsors. I want to highly recommend you get Acquisition Aficionado magazine. Every month, Acquisition Aficionado magazine brings you tactics for business buying and selling you won't find anywhere else. Learn firsthand from industry leaders who share their success stories, featuring in-depth interviews and stories from leading figures in the business acquisition industry. This multi-platform mobile magazine speaks to acquisition entrepreneurs wherever they are in the journey. And I want you to visit acquisitionaficionado.com today. Hello and welcome to the How to Exit podcast. Today I'm here with Ian Smith. He is the founder of the Portfolio Partnership, where they help business owners better their business and get them ready to sell and make them businesses that people would love to buy. Thank you for being here today, Ian.
Thank you. Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah. I always love this part because I get to learn your background, your story, kind of how did you end up and I jokingly say, how in the hell did you end up on a mergers and acquisitions call, right?
Right.
There's a lot of things that people be doing in the world, and you're sitting here talking to a guy about buying, selling, and growing through acquisition.
Right.
What landed you on a show like this?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was the classic young Scottish chartered accountant. I mean, you can't get more traditional than that from Glasgow. CA was a big thing to get behind your name. Like you had your degree, but everyone had a degree almost. I mean, I don't say that. If you don't have a degree, that's fine by me, but I'm just saying the CA qualification. And so you go into finance. I mean, become a young CFO. But I knew that I wanted to grab more than that. I was very strategic. I mean, it sounds boring, but I was very strategic. I wanted to get M&A experience. And not every CFO role gives you that. I mean, unless you're inside a practice acquirer, I mean, you may never see M&A. I mean, it sounds strange, but many CFOs don't get involved in exits and acquisitions. So I strategically moved from a huge organization called Thomson's, the publishing giant, Thomson Reuters. Now, at 26, I was a finance director. So at 27, I said, no, I think it's time for me to move on. They'd asked me to sell my division with my boss. So I was thrown into M&A actually because we were non-core. You've heard that phrase before, which is fine by me. I mean, I wasn't 55 with 5 kids. I was 27 with jobs were easy to come by to some extent. But before the exit even happened, I'd set up a move into investment banking, and Thomson's were quite shocked that I had the audacity to say I didn't want to stay with them into another division. So we'll get plans for you. I said, yeah, well, that's not going to work. So, well, because I knew that I wanted to dive into investment banking, and I met an incredible guy. It's always about the people, isn't it? So I met an incredible guy who took me under his wing and taught me M&A right at the coalface. I mean, really straight into the lower and middle market world of buying and selling. And, once you're in that world, you can't do anything but learn because you're in meetings almost immediately if you're selling with buyers and if you're on the acquisition trail, you're meeting targets. And so, yeah, I spent 15 years in London building 2 investment banks and, went from small 2 or 3 of us to 20, 25 people with research departments. And this was in the 80s and 90s. That's how old I am. You can show the gel's working. So but it's funny, your first passion always comes above the surface again. In investment banking, it's quite a tough, early grind. It's, and I would say to the audience, exits or selling and buying aren't a mirror image. Not the exits and selling a company's easy. Building it's hard, but selling it isn't that difficult. It was a great company, but buying another company is a country mile difference. That is a much harder skill set. I mean, to go on the acquisition trail and follow a process like I've written about in my books and showing empathy and respect for owners and really working that system and really looking through the eyes of a buyer and building that case and board papers and really justifying strategically why you're doing this. That is a mile more difficult than selling a business. And people compare them and they're not, oh, it's like buying a house. An acquisition is like buying a house if you're buying the family along with a house. If you want to think of it that way, I don't know whether you want to do that myself. There's not much room. So that's when I got into M&E right from the start. And when I came over to Boston, it was to do turnaround work. There was a software business that I wanted to turn around in London, and I had an office in Boston. And so I was commuting every 2 weeks. And I said to my wife, I don't think this is sustainable. I mean, I know people complain about the commute, but London to Boston, that's a hell of a commute. So I moved the family over, and really what was behind that was the passion of being an operator again. Like, I had great time being an operator in Thomson's, I had fun, working with great people, the magazine division. Even as an investment banker, I would stray into the operational side of the business, try and help them get it better. And my boss would say, Ian, you're an investment banker. Stop it. They don't pay you to do that stuff. I'm like, yeah, but I could just get the controls a bit tighter and I could really help the sales team. Like, no. So I really was in my element again, turning around businesses, and you really have to grab all the levers, mainly cash, when you're turning around businesses. It could be software, it could be HR, it could be technical, high tech semiconductor production. Doesn't really matter. You dive in and you start getting into operations again. So the States has been a blast. I mean, I've been here 23 years now, and this is home. Obviously, I'm a citizen, and this is life. The kids are 33 and 31. I mean, they are American ladies carving out careers. So this is home. Not that we look back to London occasionally. So the M&A, to answer the question, the M&A was in my blood, and we'll get on to what I'm up to now in the last sort of 15 years, because the turnaround work stopped about 2009 or 10. Done a couple of software turnarounds, and I thought it's time to go off on my own and do something that I had a passion for, which is really entrepreneurship and helping entrepreneurs get to the next level. That was really I had the audacity to believe I could help them. And it's like, I'd made so many mistakes. I thought I've got to be able to teach them some of these mistakes, right? So anyway, that was a long answer. It helped, I think, explain what we're going to talk about.
No, it was perfect, and you brought a couple things up to my mind there, and one of them inside of there, you talked about doing turnarounds and being the operator and stuff. When I
Mm,
first got into this space,
mm,
I thought, well, you know what? I used to hire a lot of interns, people who wanted I had a real estate investment firm, and
right.
I also owned the RIA, the Real Estate Investment Association in our town,
Hmm.
and people would say, "I wanna learn real estate investment." Like, "Well, you can come work at my office." It's a non-paid gig, but, we'll teach you, you'll work with me side by side, you'll see what we're doing, how we're
Right.
doing it. We're buying dozens of houses, and, once you find a great deal, I'll help you fund it, and I'll work with you on a deal, right? So, you gotta learn the math first, you gotta learn a few things. So, I thought when I got into space, like, you know what, I'm gonna call around to some PE firms and some investment banks and say, "Look, I wanna learn this space,
Yeah.
I'll intern." And one of them was honest enough with me and go, "Dude," he basically says, "Man, I don't know if you wanna do this." I said, "Why?" He goes, "This is a young man's game." I
Ah,
said, "What you talking about?" So we expect our interns to pull 60, 70-hour weeks and do
right.
analytics and
Right. Right.
stuff. Our interns come from college most of the time, and
Right.
they're young, have no family, no commitments, and
Yeah.
they'll pull 50, 60-hour weeks and are analyzing deal after deal after deal and running numbers and doing all the dirt work we don't wanna do.
Right.
And I was like, "You're right, I don't wanna pull 50, 60-hour weeks,"
Ah,
right?
you're right.
So was born a podcast where I ask experts questions so I can learn. But, I commend you on being through those rounds. I'm sure, if it's a difference between you've already got your college degree, you already, got some skills to offer them,
Right.
and you're a key employee, then, "Hey, I'm trying to prove myself, and I'll work myself to the bone to carve out a spot because the interns are different, in that space. Because he said he goes, "You're really close to what we would need just to, come on as an advisor or something like that, but you
Right.
don't quit telling these guys you wanna be an intern because they look at you and go, 'You're not gonna pull the hours.'"
The pigeonhole stuff that's going on all the time. I mean, I've had that in all my career. I mean, like, it's almost like you've got to explain I'm a recovering accountant. Like as soon as you do that qualification, it's like, well, you couldn't, that's a specialist area. So I've always, I suppose, and it's germane to this discussion, I've always thought about the pie chart. I've always thought when certainly I want to make sure that pie chart is filled out. So, not everyone needs that mindset or wants that mindset, but it's a mindset I've always had. So I've gone after challenges like the turnaround work so that I could get much better at cash management, sales, driving growth. And then in the last 14 years, I've thrown myself into entrepreneurship, helping owners reposition, rebrand, replumb the sales process, teach them what a financial pack looks like every month, teach them about alignment, about one of the things, and I'll talk about one of the big areas I'm going after at the moment, which is I do actually think that, and I've been around this subject for so long, it's scary, really. Can't believe I'm this old now, but there you go. But the subject really is entrepreneurship. In many ways, this may sound controversial, is flawed. I really believe it's flawed in the sense that nothing to do with hard work, nothing to do with courage, nothing to do with smarts, none of that. All of that's a given. It's that people are building businesses looking through the lens of a seller, and that will always lead to painful realizations. And I'm trying to, in my work more and more these days, having done a lot of acquisitions and done a lot of entrepreneurship, I'm trying to teach owners, and I don't mean that patronizing me. I'm really just trying to teach them to stand and move their feet and position themselves to look through the lens of a buyer. And if you just make that one movement, forget employing external consultants, forget employing anyone, whatever the business is, 10 people, 5 people, 20 people. And remember, nearly 90% of America employs 19 people or less. So don't think, I had a client in Boston said to, Ian, I'm only got 101 people, employees. I mean, I'm not a big company. Really? Okay, well, you're in the 1.3% of America. He said, well, what do you mean? Well, I want you to go out and tell your staff because they're all eating ESOP, they're all into shares. And I think you need to tell them just how big you are. I don't think they realize. And he said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, there's only 116,000 companies that employ 100 people or more in America out of 6.2 million. And he's like, no, that can't be true. I said, okay, it's only the US Census data, so don't believe it if you want it. I didn't just make up for price, so that kind of thing it drives the thought process for me of entrepreneurship needs to look through the lens of a buyer, because when you do that, I don't mean to sell the business. It's really to make you realize there's 3 huge issues that buyers really, really love about businesses. So building businesses buyers love to buy is my catchphrase, whether you ever sell.
Mhm.
Because the thing is, there's no such thing as a contested takeover of a private company. If you and your wife own the shares, that's it. If you say, Ron, I really like you, but I'm not selling my company, you can't say, well, I'm going to go to the market and buy those shares. You can't. We own them.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
it's private.
Private. And so I'm saying, why don't you build a business that buyers love to buy? Because it's a safer way. That often clicks clients across a line of hill. Like you said, safer. I said, yeah. So scaling and getting bigger are 2 different things. So much more to scaling than getting bigger. Of course, it involves getting bigger, but scaling involves safety. So what I mean by that, so if you look through the lens of a buyer, there's 3 big things. One is unique positioning. They would love a unique positioning and branding, niche and specialism. And, ideally, you don't have a lot of competition. So they don't like things with lots of competition. Obviously, they're not going to buy something, So that unique branding and competition can start at $1 million revenue, not 50 million. It's not page 20. It's page 3 of your life as a company, right? People will think, oh, well, I'll do that later. No, you don't do it later. You do it now. So that unique positioning, I don't care whether it's ball bearings. I don't care whether it's trolley handles. I don't care whether it's, Ferraris or steering wheels for Ferraris or die bonding, or you name an unusual sector or a niche that I've been in. And the players that survive are those with unique positionings. They've got a secret sauce that gives them that ability to perform an unusual and lucrative and attractive set of results for customers. And that unique positioning is number 1. And often companies are invisible. I mean, Seth Godin, the marketing guru, says this very well, and I've paraphrased it. companies that are either invisible or remarkable. People think there's a bit in the middle. I
Right.
don't think there is. I think there's
Yeah.
4,000 software companies in Massachusetts. 4,000. You imagine how many of them are mumbling on their website about what they do. Well, we do required orchestration of the, like, okay, try again. Best of three. Still don't know what you do, right? And that whole, when it's compare Wasabi or somebody who is a private company who have nailed their positioning of cloud storage, that's what they do. What else do you do? No, we do cloud storage. Yeah, but what are the other things you do? No, we do cloud storage. How many questions? How many times do you want to ask me what I do? Like, that's what I do.
Mhm.
And I think that too many entrepreneurs, they don't get that unique positioning. My metaphor, if you like, is the pyramid. So there's a great image on a PowerPoint slide of a massive pyramid, beautiful technicolor pyramid, big pointy parts of the pyramid. All right. Entrepreneurships have got it upside down. They've got a flat, they get bored doing one thing. They go, you know what? Why don't we open a coffee shop? But you're in car repairs. Yeah, but a coffee shop on the side would be really attractive, wouldn't it? I mean, people need coffee. And when was the last time you ran a coffee shop? No, I've never ran a coffee shop. I'm not really good at car repair either, but I did run a coffee shop. It's like they go sideways, right? Instead of being really focused and sharp and say we just do tires or we just do this or we do, and I would say to entrepreneurship, just specialize in Greater Boston, specialize in Seattle, make yourself remarkable, and you will get bigger. I mean, people just want the product. Could be donuts, could be anything, could be technical, something you produce. So that's the one. Number two and number three. Number two, looking through the lens of a buyer, dependency. So buyers hate dependency. What does dependency mean? Well, the business relies on Bill. Everything revolves around Bill. He codes, he sells, he shouts at people like, well, I think we should, paint the wall. No, check with Bill. It's like, really? So dependency on owner, dependency on three customers, 80% of the revenue is three customers, not a good sign. Dependency on technology, AI will come and kick you. Dependency on legacy products. Last product our launch was 1996, not a good look. So there's things, why do the buyers worry about these things? Because of risk. These are massive risks for a buyer. Remember, a buyer is owning under their ownership, they're owning those problems. So they're not going to buy a problem. So again, sellers are not looking through that lens. So unique positioning, dependency, and then thirdly, underestimated repeatable processes, repeatable processes that scale, sales processes, marketing processes, playbooks, if you like, inverted commas, how we do things around here. But what playbooks do, what those processes do as well, and this talks to this audience, they allow founders to pass on activities to lesser beings, right? Because if you write it up, like I want to capture how your selling is so clever and smart. How do you do that? Well, you actually look at good salespeople. They actually go through a very simple process. They're often doing a discovery process, a diagnosis process, a design and sort of deciding what best to sell, whatever that product, and then delivering that product. But if you look at that, all world-class sales professionals, they're defined by the questions they ask, not by their product knowledge. Product knowledge is just, that's just the entry fee. I mean, if you don't have product knowledge, I mean, what the hell are you trying to do? And so they get confused. So they really good salesmen have got really great questions, which unearth. That's an example. Sales, for example, is an example. So founders, once they start documenting how to do storytelling, marketing, and positioning, and then selling, and this get what you can bring in less experienced folks, start running those playbooks, and that's how you start to scale. So I think that looking through the lens of a buyer is a tremendously powerful tool for any size company to get stronger and better and improve their margins and grow safer. And that's what's missing from the exit process at the moment. Exit process 1.0 is I'm an owner of a business. I've reached a point where I want to sell it. I contact my local friendly investment bank. Maybe I do a bake off to find the best investment bank. They then take the business, try and sell it, fail to sell it, or sell it for an underwhelming sum. Exit process 1.0 hasn't changed in 100 years. Unacceptable. Offensively wrong. What's not happening is that owner should be going through exit 2.0. Exit process 2.0 is a reimagined version of that, which is there has to be a value creation piece of the puzzle, ideally 2 years or 3 years prior to you thinking of an exit, where you start looking through the lens of a buyer at what's wrong. We do, for example, we do a saleability test over 15 criteria, and every entrepreneur that I've done that for, there's 15 questions, for example, and therefore you can score 5 points for every question. So that's 75 points. No one scored 70. A few score 60 and many score in the 20s. How can you score 20 out of 75? The business makes money. Well, value dependency on the owner, score 0. Why? Because it's totally dependent on the owner. Not a good score. So you go down this list, and so that's an example of looking through the lens of a buyer. So that's over the last 12 years, certainly, we are now attacking that agenda or that approach. And it's noticeable that buyers, when they want to come along and buy a target company, and you are that target company, by taking that approach, you are literally ticking their boxes of risk management. They're saying, oh, you can no dependency here. Your biggest customer represents 3% of revenue. You've got a great management team. You've got some new innovations coming out on the market. Some of them haven't got traction yet, but some of the ones have got traction. You've got innovation built in. Staff morale is very high. We can tell, it's like the buyer's like, this is great news. And they know that this target is going to ace due diligence long before due diligence. And so I say to entrepreneurs, what's the downside of taking that approach? Even if you never go through an exit process, you'll have a much more enjoyable, fun business to run. And it's just all I've done is to change the report card. No, P&L, cash flow, balance sheet, all the usual ratios, of course, but by looking through that lens, and most entrepreneurs aren't doing that, looking through the lens of a seller, and you'll never see the value leakage if you do that.
So I didn't even realize you were an author before you came on, because I guess I missed that part or something. I'm looking right now, 3 different books out. I don't know if there's more, but I'm just glancing at Amazon, and you've got Fulfilling the Potential of Your Business. You've got The Acquirer's Playbook,
Yep.
and you got a Growing a Private Company, build commercial strategies for building a business worth millions. So out of those, I guess the Fulfilling Your Potential of Your Business is your most recent one?
Yes. And both, actually, the most recent one, Ron, was the Acquirer's Playbook, but there's a couple of years difference. Certainly the entrepreneurship one is the Fulfilling Potential of Your Business. Yes,
Yeah.
having said that, the Acquirer's Playbook is very short and sharp, very short read. It's actually, I was saying this the other day, it's actually a very good little read for sellers, because you really do want to see and understand how buyers think. I think it's incredibly important for sellers to understand the mindset of a buyer. And I think, if nothing else, it helps you in the negotiation room, you know, in the LOI, letter of intent type meetings, or any dance you do with a buyer to understand how they think. Now, having said that, the reason I wrote the Acquirer's Playbook was a lot of buyers misbehave. They misbehave, or they've got a horrendous process. I remember a big seminar, and somebody in the front row, I explained the acquisition process, 25 stages through various themes, research, strategic research, etc., target identification, early meetings, all the way through due diligence and legals. And I broke it into boxes with stories around each box. I remember a hand went up at the front row, and it was maybe halfway through the morning session. It was a long, big seminar. I said, "You've got a question?" I did say ask questions anytime. He said, "Yeah, I know it just seems a lot of work." And I'll let it pause for 150 people just to take the breath. I said, "Yeah, there's a reason why it's a lot of work. You're buying somebody's business for pricing. You're not buying a new computer." And I think I said it nicely. We took a laugh about it.
Mhm.
It was fun. And it was a spin-off comedy. It's made by other members of the audience. It just got everyone there's a few lines that get people interested and excited. So that's just the reality, is that buyers recognize that, in practice, serial acquirers recognize that they need to build a muscle that learns from every deal. And so it's not the volume of deals. You hear people say, I've done 70 deals. Yeah, but if you haven't learned from each, maybe you're not very good at them. I mean, you do 7 deals and you learn intrinsically what, from each of those 7, you are you're pretty practiced. You've really learned the pieces from the seller side. Yes, I think fulfilling potential and Acquirer's Playbook are strong. The other one that is helpful is the free ones on the website. I've got the Exit Playbook on the website, which is just a PDF, 60 pages, and the Integration Playbook, Acquisition Integration Playbook, which again will give you insight into an acquirer's integration strategy. I mean, it's made for acquirers, but again, the Exit Playbook and the Integration Playbook are on the website, at the Portfolio Partnership website, and they're free. I mean, the Acquirer's Playbook and the Fulfilling Potential are on Amazon. But yeah, I love sharing content. I think you and I are identical in that sense. I mean, I've had competitors over the years go, Ian, we charge, you can't give this stuff away. We charge a lot of money for this stuff. I say, good luck with that one. Because how dare you have, I mean, I understand this proprietary stuff, whatever that you charge for or whatever, but I like to write at a level that doesn't dumb it down. Like if you read my playbooks, you're like, oh, right, you're not missing much out here. So, this is, and the clients are quite surprised when they say, God, you're really following your own book. It's like, why wouldn't I do that? I mean, when we're on the acquisition tour with clients, we've certainly got a level of an acquirer's playbook that is very specific to that sector and has got all sorts of operator tips and all sorts of ways of making sure that we're mentoring and exposing the team inside the company to be better acquirers. There's a lot of stuff that just wouldn't be relevant in a public book, right? But so there's obviously an internal client version of our playbooks. It's just more detailed, but our books give you a lot of it. But yeah. So the authors thing, and the one thing I would say about all this stuff, I'm a big fan of simplifying the complex. I've always had that as a desire. I can't remember. I mean, since I was a kid, I mean, I've always loved the idea of, nah, it's going to be very explaining that. That was garbage. That was like, I didn't understand. And it's the way I learned. I simplified it so I could learn it better. And I think it's now in me. It's just the way I do things. So, for example, there's 400-page books on valuation, and I've got a sentence instead. So you can read the 400 pages, or you just can understand this sentence, which is buyers perceive value, sellers aspire to price. And if you unpack that, it talks a lot. It teaches a lot to entrepreneurs about what's happening. So buyers are standing, if you're in Tokyo and you're buying a software company in Boston, you're in one set of shoes. You're in Tokyo, you're looking at Boston, you're perceiving value. You better build in travel costs, integration costs, language costs. You know what I mean? Like you're perceiving value. Maybe you don't have any software companies in the US, so it's a value to you. If you're in London buying the same Boston company, it's a different value. So there's perception of value very much. Sellers, it's not your money you're writing the check. It's not your money that's paying for the business. So you should aspire, within reason, to a price. Now, what influences that? Well, if you and I, Ron, were very competitive and we're both at high school together and you just sold your whole podcast business for 23 million, my business overnight is now worth 24 because I've always been better than you. That's how it works. But Ian, your business can't be worth 24. It must be. Ron just worth 20. I mean, I exaggerate, obviously, but there's a little bit of that, or your brother sold a business, or you've seen a SaaS.
I was going to say sold, man. Just make the offer. I'll give it to you. 24 million goes a long ways, man.
You want it all in cash or no? But what I'm saying is that there's aspiration as a seller that is guided by, I mean, there's a lot of software companies are still got the hangover of 2021's valuation, like crazy multiples of revenue, 10 times revenue was a valuation. Like, why would you write a check for that much? But if you're a seller, you're like, well, I'm aspiring to, okay, I'll take a little bit off, but I'm worth 8 times my revenue. The buyer's going, Jesus, it's not good. So one of our jobs, obviously, as we work with clients to help create value as a value creation company, we work with clients. There's about 22 of us, and we're trying to find clients that want help like that value creation with an exit in mind. Not always, but with an exit in mind. And we can't hold you to that, so you might change your mind. But at an 18 months to 2 year runway, you're checking in with them about what their value aspirations are. And if they really think that they're worth 100 million, that now's the time to have that dialogue because, and it's a hard one for investment banks because investment banks, and I've been there, seller says, well, I think I'm worth $20 million. And you're like, I hate to disappoint you, but that's a big, big number for a company with 3 million in revenue, and so you have those dialogues, but I'm more talking about the subject that 90% of entrepreneurs are just not ready for prime time. So they're entering this exit process, meaning an investment bank's involved and doing a dance for the buyers, but they really shouldn't have been there in the first place. And so they get dragged into this long process, take their eye off the ball, the buyer walks away, and they're left with a business worth less than it was when they started. That happens too often, doesn't happen every time, but it happens too often. I'm on missionary work to try and stop that happening as often. And, some companies are ready. They have great companies and the buyer comes along and they say, well, let's talk to this one buyer, and the buyer puts a ridiculous number on the table and maybe a deal happens. But I'm just talking in general that, yes, you've got to really think about pairing. And therefore, our exit process, as we're defining it, is inserted a new part to the exit process. It doesn't start with the investment bank. Nothing wrong with the investment bank can get involved in selling your business. It actually backs up 2 years and says, look, let's do a buyer assessment, a branding assessment, a saleability test. Let's do that now as almost like an audit. And that will prioritize your actions over the next 2 years. And it'll get you so ready for an exit if you so choose. And also, when you've got the systems in place, the forecasting is in place, that you're linking the Salesforce sort of sales pipelines with your cash flow and your P&L. When you're in the middle of that buyer's dance and they're asking for the latest forecast, you're on top of that detail because there's nothing worse than they say, well, can we see your latest forecast? And you're like, we'll get you that next week. And it's like, okay, next week's fine. And then next week comes it, well, we need a few more weeks to work on it. It's like, is there something wrong? It's like, there's no great mystery about what a buyer will need as a set of FAQs. Fact, there's no discovery what should be in the data room. So why not work towards that? And it's an easy way to build the business anyway. So that's kind of where that's the biggest difference, I think, with what we're doing. And we're also believing in nothing wrong with consultants coming in, but we are paid as consultants, certainly. But I think that, and we've talked about this earlier, we are fractional practice. So we're a big fan of actually being in the business side by side with the management team. And what that does is it actually deals with one of the issues that buyers have. It actually deals with mentoring quite nicely. Because if you're in the business, your junior financial controller can only really learn from an experienced CFO by watching them. You can give them a manual and say, look, I'd really like you to write stories about the business in terms of the financial performance like this. And you go, I don't really know what that means. And so if you say, well, here's the results from a construction company that I'm scaling at the moment, which I am. And here's what the story is behind the gross margin, the indirect costs, the variable costs, the subcontractor costs. This is what the overheads have been doing. These are the stories, these are the 10 main stories. That's why the gross margin is X, not Y. Oh, I see what you mean by storytelling. Yeah, don't tell me what the number is. I can get a sixth grader to tell me what the number is. Please don't insult me by telling me the number. If you're going to give me a story with it, that's different. And I think I was so lucky, and so many people are not this lucky, that I was being groomed and taught and mentored at 24 and 25 and 26, 27. I had really good bosses that said, I wish you could write better. It's just, or they would say things like, in terms of spent a lot of, time and energy with the financials and all that. He said, and my boss said to me, Ian, remember, if it's interesting, it's probably wrong. It's so true. When gross margin is like 25 or 47%, suddenly it's 36. Like, how can it be 36? There's a mistake, right? And it's so many young financial executives or young execs are like, they produce the numbers, could be KPIs for marketing, but they're not looking at the numbers and saying, it doesn't smell right. Like, get your smell senses, get your muscle in tuned with what that sector, like, you should be able to feel for something's off. And I think that people get a little bit confused with processes. That's an overhead and all that. It's what processes and playbooks do for entrepreneurship. It frees up time to do the more interesting stuff. So there's a lot packed into those comments, but the fundamental summary really is that entrepreneurship could be working on the right stuff rather than the wrong stuff, and therefore having more fun, making more money is the consequence of that. And you can break it down by department, but that's the headline for me. And the added bonus is the buyers will love you.
A lot of people don't get that is, they see this as a lot of work to get a company sellable,
Mm,
but they don't understand is once it's sellable, it's also scalable, and you don't necessarily
right,
need to be there all the time. And if you're really ready to scale, now you can go back to focusing on what you do best. How many CEOs out there started a company and they did really well because they were great at sales,
right,
and then they got distracted by all these little side tasks and all this other stuff, and now they no longer spend much time selling,
right.
but they've got, because they're out there. I was interviewing somebody and he was talking about he had a client that had to get there at 5 a.m. in the morning because he had to go out and get all the, put grease on the machines and do all this stuff to get his manufacturing before they start them up in the morning.
Right.
So he was doing maintenance work every morning at 5 a.m. And I bet if you find that guy and you sit down with him and say, "What are you great at? What did you when you started this business? What made it win?" It's going to either be sales or design or something unique, unique product design or something like that. You're
Yeah.
like, "Why don't you spend your time doing that anymore?" And they don't. So there's a beauty in doing what you're talking about, running this process you're talking about, getting the thing sellable, because then you have 2 options. Either have more time with your family and more time to look at other projects and find hobbies. Because if it's truly running well, it doesn't need you. You're a complement to the business, not a requirement of it. Or so you get more time, or you get to go, "Okay, I'm going back to doing what I really love doing. I'm gonna go out and meet new clients. I'm gonna go out and do what" you know
It's all the benefits of this. And the other thing, Ron, is, but frankly, it could be somebody in their 40s, 50s, or whatever it could be. I mean, but the age thing is dangerous because you can get a 37-year-old just burnt out. And then you get somebody like me who's, number 3 in the country at 400 meters in terms of track and field. I'm a competitive masters athlete. I'm 65 years of age. I'm not burnt out.
Mhm.
I'm very fit. My resting pulse is 54. I mean, yeah, you can talk about age, but okay, you want to run around the track with me? I mean, it's like the age thing it just doesn't work for some. I mean, of course, people get older. Don't I know it? But at this point, the other benefit, all of the above, I totally agree. The other benefit is whatever age you are and you've got lots of energy left in you, a buyer might be a nice next career step for you. Because again, the myth is, well, buyers have got a warehouse full of great execs, MBAs, they're all ready to run the target business. Garbage. The clients don't they need the entrepreneur. In fact, that's why they like the business, the entrepreneur and the entrepreneur's team. They can take it to the next stage. Private equity is built on that theory. Like a private equity is going to know what CEO leave.
This is one of my favorite things, when I'm talking to people who are trying to sell a company and maybe they've got 4 or 5 people and looking at them, and one of them happens to be a
Right.
strategic acquirer, because 'cause I'm never gonna compete at that level. So you can have a real conversation with a business owner who's trying to tell you that his most important thing,
Uh,
that his legacy is taken care of, his most important things his employees are taken care of, that they'll still have a job 2 years from now, and that the money is secondary. So then you can have a real conversation. It's like, "Look, then why are you pitting me against a strategic acquirer? Because we need to dispel a myth here, because if you're really worried about the loyalty of your employees to you, the keeping the business in your community and employing people of your community, that your legacy lives on, that those people still have jobs." 70 to 90% of those strategic acquirers fail. They want your technology, they want your customer list, but the company itself in existence, 70 to 90% will cease to exist in 2 to 3 years, and there won't be a business in your little town. Now, if
yeah.
it's okay if money is that important to you and you want that check. Just decouple yourself from the idealistic thing that it's taken care of with either my offer or theirs, right? Because it's not.
I would expand that thinking. Like, listen, people get a bit confused with it. When you're selling a company, do not try and compare private equity with a strategic buyer. They are totally different objectives. If you want to sell your company to a private equity player, you're assuming that you'll be in for another 3 to 5 years, working harder than you did in the first 20 years. As long as you're okay with that, by the way, you'll only sell half of your stake at the very most. The other half will be rolled over in the new company. And you may or may not get diluted a little bit if they add on more companies to your company to make it bigger and all that. But that's it's an amazing life being a private equity operator. It can be a lot of fun with the right partners, some great private equity partners that you'd enjoy working with. So it's not all bad, but that's an objective. That is a totally different objective from selling out to IBM, taking your cash, working for IBM for a couple of years and then leaving. Those are not comparable. And we've done case studies in CEO clubs. And I explained that to the group that was listening in the CEO club. I said, please don't try and compare what's better or worse. They're different objectives. They're comparing having dessert with a steak. Like they're two different objectives. Like now, when you look at, so once you've made that decision, you say, I don't want private equity in there. In fact, they wouldn't like us anyway. And I'm comparing strategics. To your point, Ron, you've got a lot more power than you believe. You can due diligence the buyer and you can really work out what is important to you. And there are many owners who can't show their face in town because that's what happened to their employees in the town. And you got to think through, life's very short. Is it really worth doing that to you and your family? And, I exaggerate a little, only a little bit, but I've seen banks, I've seen technology companies sell out to the wrong buyer and they've regretted it. And I think they had choices.
As I say, if I ever do a course like where I teach anything, and I'm a teacher at heart. I love teaching things. I've taught real estate investment when I was doing. I kind of always kind of gravitate whatever I'm doing. I gravitate to being the guy that educates others. So I got into real estate after 4 or 5 years. Next thing I know, I own a little education company teaching it. I will probably never teach acquisition of mergers and acquisitions because it's so complex. I'm old enough. I don't want to go do 10 million deals, 10 million deals before I start teaching something. If I ever teach anything in this space, it's gonna be something that goes across all businesses. This is a people business, and it would be around building rapport. I think so many, people, and especially once you get past in the small business world, you can't get it done if you can't build rapport. In the middle market, there's a lot of investment makers and stuff, and if you're 100% numbers, oriented, you'll lose a lot of deals if you don't have to put rapport, but anytime there's a cap table bigger than 3, anytime there's more than 3 people getting a check out of, exit, numbers become more important than they were in the small business world. So you can get deals done without having high levels of rapport in that mid and upper markets. It's just harder for you. So this is universal across the thing. If you can build deep rapport, learn to listen with tactical empathy, a phrase that came from Chris Voss. But if you can learn how to connect with people, understand where they're trying to go, and build connections with them, you could be the lowest offer on the table and still get the deal done. Not even intentionally. That could be the best you can do, but the rapport wins over everything else. And a lot of people miss this.
It's all about landscaping. So when you're in a meeting with someone, you've got to landscape and prepare for the next stages. So I try very hard without anyone knowing to chair every meeting. So you don't know I'm chairing it. I'm actually chairing it. So do that in a very nice and subtle way, and the meeting's going smoothly, but people don't know quite why. It just is. And it's partly clock doctor, watching the time, watching people's body language. And you get good at that with doing seminar work. You get good at taking in the audience while talking, and you say, yeah, that guy at the back has got a question, but he's not putting his hand up. Or I think she needs to speak to me at coffee break. I can see her body language is saying she doesn't quite get something, but she doesn't want to put her hand up. I'm not going to stop the flow, but I'm going to take her aside. I mean, you get very quick at picking up vibes and stuff like that. And you get very quick at saying, or you're very good at saying, look, let's just close on this. There's going to be a few more stages to this, and let's do another meeting where I want to meet the sales director. And, you start saying that, this is why I want to meet it. So you're explaining yourself. And so when you say, look, there's a set of numbers, set of questions we need. And some of these might be a bit sensitive. So take the customer names off, just give us A, B, C, D, E. So you think through their worry before they give you that worry. And that shows a care, and it shows an attentiveness and a respect that you can't bottle that. You just are who you are. And the other big thing is you've got to be totally consistent. Like if somebody says to you in the first meeting, how much do you think I'm worth? And you blurt out, by mistake that 12.6 million figure or 13 or whatever, they remember which hour of the day that was, whether it was raining or not, and what they were wearing. And you see 7 meetings later, so let's talk about the value. No, you've given me the value, it was 13 million. No, that was I just throwing that out there, 5 weeks ago. Yeah, the other biggest tip for entrepreneurs out there, I don't care whether it's M&A or whatever you're in negotiations or chatting through contracts or whatever, it seems simple to me, but never go first. Clarify the other side's position first before opening your mouth, i.e. it pays dividends in M&A big time. I mean, I've said to sellers when on the acquisition trail, so, okay, Frank, nice to see you again. And I see your wife say, I was looking forward to meeting Sheila. And this is great. We're really making progress here. And I'm glad we were able to share our information as well with you, because I know you were sensitive to that. So you've got our information, we're not just taking from you, we're giving you some information. So any changes since we last met? 10-second pause. Sorry, Sheila, do you want to tell Ian? She's like, no, you tell him, Frank. Yeah, 3 clients fired us last week. So you shouldn't assume anything, and especially in M&A world where, the business world doesn't care that you're in an M&A process. Doesn't care. 5 clients hire you and fire you every day of the week. They're going to say, we won't fire you this week. So we knew you were in negotiation with the buyer. That would be cruel. They don't care. Right. And so you got to remember that, I think, in terms of that clarification point, it struck me so well. It's so many meetings over the years. And the other one is parking issues as well. I mean, you got to learn to park tricky issues. Don't keep punching through a bad issue. Say, look, you know what? We're not going to get to that agreement right now. So let's just park that. I sense it's sensitive. Don't get me wrong. I understand your sensitivity. Let's put that to the side. Before you know it, you've agreed 5 or 6 other points. Now he's rocking and rolling. Now, let's come back to that point, because let me unpack it. Let me understand why you believe that. That's a killer. Help me understand why you believe that. Oh, well, this is why I believe it. Oh, I didn't know that. I can see why so now you're on this. So that kind of stuff is teachable, but it helps doing 60 deals. I mean, it does just help being there a lot.
So I always want to ask this question. I don't get it in there most of the time.
Yes.
You've been in the M&A space for 20 plus years.
Yep.
You advise businesses all the time on a grow, scale, and exit.
Yes.
I don't, and it's maybe I'm wired differently because I'm an entrepreneur. I couldn't do, and I don't to this day. I still look at things I want to buy. I couldn't do what you do day in and day out without accumulating a bunch of things I bought along the way. How do you go out into the comp? Because, at some point you look at it and go, why don't I own this? Right. And you start trying to raise the capital and to
Oh,
buy it because you've got them ready to do something. How do you do what you do every day without going, you know what? I want to tuck this one underneath this wing over here and make it mine. Because that's what I find myself doing that. I consult with people on growing and acquiring businesses and stuff. And the next thing I know 5%, 10%, 15% equity in their company because I wanna be part of it, right? And they're willing to give me a part of it because I'm getting results.
yeah. I mean, that's a fair question. I guess it's that you want to be in a space with people that you love working with, that you really, really enjoy, and you can add value. And I think that you've got to define that space. Otherwise it gets too broad. And so I think you do. I mean, at this stage, I've sampled a lot of the menu, as it were. And so
Mhm,
I kind of know myself well enough to know where I'm going to have the most fun. And obviously
mhm,
relatively lucrative. But I've never really chased money in that. I have chased what I thought I would enjoy, and that's done
mhm,
well. I've done fine. I think that specifically with my own situation, the only paying homage to that point, Roy, would be that I think I will merge with my branding agency partner that I've been working with closely with my team, because I think that's the equivalent of buying. I mean, I think it would just be a much stronger proposition. We're going to rebrand and rename it before the end of the year. We might bring some money in behind us. We don't really need it, but we might bring a little bit into the balance sheet, because I think having a cause, and you've been around this subject and the cause of exits for many, many years, acquisitions, exits, all that stuff. I think when you spot a gap, and I think it's a gap that's fulfilled a little bit by private equity with their value creation teams, but that's a tiny part of the market. As you know, it's a tiny part of the market. When you look at the general market of 5 million to, I don't know, 100 million revenue, that kind of size of the market, you know all the hard work, the sweat, the tears, the risk people are taking, second mortgages, home equity loans, the whole kind of pressure, names on the line, all that stuff. And you just want to do something about that. And I think we've got some silver bullets there, some keys that we've learned the hard way. And I suppose that's what's that cause and working with people I love working with. When you bring those two together, life could be worse. You know what I mean? And I mean, it's not to say when that practice is then formed by the end of the year, we may, I think it would be more acqui-hires for us, to be honest. I don't know whether I think, to be honest as well, our model will probably more talk to a generational issue, which is there's a lot of 1099, very experienced folk who don't want to be in a payroll anymore, but they'd like a client. They don't want 10 clients, but they'd like, and they're really good chief revenue officers, or they're really good CFOs, but they want maybe just one client to help. Well, we've got a model that, of course, brings those 1099s in because they can be part of, like I say, educational software value creation team. You know what I mean? Like we bring them in with probably a very specific sector expertise, and we would deploy our models, but with that domain experience that we embedded in. But I think the day when an outside person expects to beat the knowledge domain-wise of somebody who's an entrepreneur in the domain space, I think that's wrong. I think they're flawed. I mean, I think the domain experience of most entrepreneurs is amazing, and you can understand it, but you can bring other things to the party that amplifies that expertise. I think that's the issue. And I think that you said it earlier, you don't know what you don't know. I mean, I think the biggest challenge we have in our work is just awareness, just people being aware of where they're at and maybe doing something about that for good reason. And the other beauty is of the work, you don't have to actually follow through and sell. As you say, you give yourself a better life. And certainly, if you look at the wealth management companies around the US, I mean, more and more they're trying to offer more and more value outside of wealth management just to try and give the family a better future. How can we help you? Can we introduce, well, I could do with, I don't know, a really good contractor, or I could do with, I don't know, obviously tax advice is in-house or whatever, but they're looking for expertise, and one of their skills is they know everyone. And so I think that if you have, we approach clients. I mean, I know some great lawyers in Boston who don't approach it as an M&A problem. They approach it as a problem. They say, what's your big issue? They're going, well, it's staff recruitment. Okay. Now, a lawyer's not going to help them with staff recruitment, but they know a phenomenal staff headhunting agency or whatever, that they introduce them to Amy, and Amy's brilliant. Like they go, gee, it was a great lady. Amy was brilliant. Well, that was good. I'm glad it helped. They're there to help. They're mavens. They're not there to grab an M&A fee. They're there to help. And we've not mentioned it, but people who are in sales, if they think they're about selling products, they're just in their own career. They're just confused. Like selling's nothing to do with selling products. Selling's all about career building. You are trying to help someone have a better life. That's what you're there for. If I can help you have a better life, I improve your performance in your job, then I will continue the conversation. If I can't do that, I'll leave the stage gracefully. That's how sales should operate. If you think it's about selling stuff, you're just wrong. I mean, Ron, I've got a great drug here. It's penicillin. I mean, it couldn't be any better. I don't have a fever. Sorry, I sure you said you didn't have a fever. I'll ignore that completely. No, I don't think you understand. I can sell 10 of them for $5. Like, no, I don't have a fever. No, you're not listening to me. This drug, no, you're not listening to me. I don't have a fever. Like, come on. Like, sales, and all the great sales folk out there know, of course, they know this stuff. But again, it's just one example of people's misconception of what sales is. What's entrepreneurship? Like, you've got to redefine some of these things. And I think that the education space the education is missing. There's a space there. And I think that one of the things in this part of my career I hope to do is really shed a spotlight on better ways of doing things. And I'll feel good about that. I mean, maybe I wouldn't have felt so good about it at 20, but I feel great about it now.
How do people get a hold of you? How do they work with you? We're well beyond the hour now. We gotta kinda wrap this up. So, how do people work with you? How do they find your company and you?
The quickest, I mean, certainly I'm very proud of the fact we've got a lot of great content on the website. So that website, if you just look up portfoliopartnership.com, you'll find us. LinkedIn, Ian Smith, I'm all over LinkedIn with great content as well. I share all the time. If you want to ping me an email, it's a very simple email. It's Ian, IEN, Ian at TPP, the Portfolio Partnership Ian at T Tommy P Peter P Peter .com tppboston.com. I did insert Boston after it just to let people know where I am. So Ian at tppboston.com. The website's got all the detail there. My cell phone's on the web. I mean, like I'm very approachable. We've got a team of partners. We're getting bigger because of probably the merger will give us even a bigger pool of talent. But I love hearing from entrepreneurs. I love responding to them. I love sharing stuff. So do not be shy about reaching out.
Give us 3 takeaways. If somebody can only remember 2 or 3 things from today's show, what would you want them to walk away with?
Yeah. Oh, that's a great question. I think the biggest one for me is entrepreneurs need to start looking through the lens of a buyer and go to the website to see what that means because all the content's on the website, but look through the lens of a buyer and therefore calibrate your business with that mindset. Number one. Number two would be look at what you're doing in your company and try really hard to make sure that all your efforts by people are aligned to the one cause. So focus, don't be distracted, focus and be the best you possibly can be at that. That would be another big takeaway from what I've learned over the years. Thirdly, speaking to the M&A space, I think valuation is a perception of value for buyers. So buyers will perceive a value to you and you should aspire. So what you can control over, you've actually got control over the perception of value in that the more you look at what's happening out there, you can actually build a business that's more attractive to a buyer. And therefore that will help your aspiration. Because if you don't do the first part, you can aspire to any number you like, but it won't be possible to achieve it. So, take control, do all your exit planning for obvious reasons, but try and dive a bit deeper into how you can make your company more valuable. So again, that's a bit like the first one, looking through the lens of a bar. But those are my takeaways. And you're not alone. That there's a lot of people out there want you to succeed, and it's important that you focus your efforts in one area. Don't try and do too many things. It's tough enough to be really good at one thing, and the competition's fierce. And I guess just try and read around the subject a little bit more as well, and improve your awareness of what's going on. So those are my takeaways. Now, awareness can cover, technology. It can cover anything you like, but I would read. I mean, Warren Buffett says this a lot about reading. It's all about read. Do try and force yourself just to read some of this stuff and bring yourself up a notch. And certainly anything that talks about buyer's mentality, etc. And that is going to help you decide on priorities because you've got limited resource, limited time. So big things, look through the lens of a buyer, align those efforts and try and focus in on a strategy that you can be the best in the world at. That will serve you well.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you for being here today. I it's just full of information and valuable stuff for all of our listeners. So thank you, and hang out for a few minutes afterwards. We'll call that a show.
Okay. Thanks, Ron. Pleasure. Thanks for that.
I want to announce our new channel partners, the ITX Marketplace. Since 1998, ITX has created $5 billion in value by selling more than 225 IT businesses in 20 countries. ITX works exclusively with IT-enabled businesses generating between 5 million and 30 million who are ready to be sold, and M&A decision makers who are ready to buy. For over 25 years, ITX has developed industry knowledge that helps determine whether a seller is a good fit for their buyers before making the match. ITX Mergers and Acquisition Marketplace we have partnered with has a proprietary database of 50,000 plus global buyers seeking IT service firms, managed service providers, Microsoft service providers, software as a service platforms, and channel partners with Microsoft, Oracle, ServiceNow, and the Salesforce space. If you have an IT-enabled business you're ready to sell, I want you to visit the itexchangenet.com/marketplace. How to exit. That link will be in the show notes. Visit them now.